Today, we're diving into one of the most dangerous threats in the digital world, that is malware. If you're someone who uses the internet, which is pretty much all of us, then this is a must to watch. So in this video, we will be covering what malware is, then exploring different types of it like viruses, worms, and trojans, and how attackers use these to compromise systems. Plus, we will show some live demonstrations on how these malware types are created and used. Let's get started then. So what exactly is malware? Malware is short for malicious software, and it refers to any software intentionally designed to cause damage to computers, networks, or systems. Its goal can range from stealing personal information to disrupting normal computer operations. There are many different types of malware in cyber world, and each with its own strategy to infiltrate and compromise your system. Let's take the example of the Stuxnet malware, which was a highly advanced worm that specifically targeted the nuclear enrichment facilities in Iran. This cyber weapon was responsible for physically damaging industrial equipment, showing just how much power malware can have in real-world scenarios. You can simply imagine like how one person infected with viral fever and cold can pass its virus to another person by only sneezing or by doing any activity, and how that virus affects a normal human body. In the same way, e-virus infect devices. Now, let's dive into the three primary types of malware, which are viruses, worms, and trojans. Let's start with viruses. So, it is a piece of malicious code that attaches itself to legitimate files or programs. And once a user runs the infected program, the virus gets activated and starts spreading itself by infecting other programs or files on the same device. But there is a fact that there should be a human interaction to run the virus in a system like a file. Having virus should be opened by the victim, so that virus can execute its malicious code. Think of it like a biological virus that spreads from host to host, except it moves through digital files. One of the most famous viruses was the I love you virus. Back in 2000, this virus spread through email with an attachment called loveletterforyou.txt. When people opened the attachment, the virus executed and started overwriting files, stealing passwords, and spreading itself to everyone in the victim's contact list. It caused billions of dollars in damage worldwide. So there are 5 main types of viruses: file infector viruses, macroviruses, boot sector viruses, polymorphic viruses, resident viruses. Now, let's create a virus using the Delma Batch Virus Maker tool. This tool simplifies the process of building a custom virus. Here, we have a typical phishing email. The victim receives an email claiming they've been selected for a job opportunity, with an attached file named offerletter.bat. The unsuspecting victim downloads and runs it, thinking it's a legitimate offer. And once it is executed, the virus immediately starts corrupting text files. As you can see on the screen, that all the text files on the victim's computer are being overwritten with malicious content pre-configured by the attacker. So Delma Batch Virus Maker tool allows attackers to design multiple types of viruses, like file corruption, admin control exploits, shutdown loops, and even infinite error messages. Here, an attacker configured Delma Batch to create a virus that specifically targets text files, corrupting their contents. You can also design viruses that cause system shutdowns, manipulate CMD windows, or even disable key system controls. This is the power attackers have with such tools. For a simpler demonstration, let's create an error message loop using batch programming. Here's the script for that. This is a basic virus that creates an infinite error loop. Once the victim runs this script, it will flood their screen with error messages, and they won't be able to close it easily because the loop restarts the error over and over. Once saved as a .bat file, all the attacker needs to do is send this disguised as something like an important document or an urgent file. When the victim opens it, they'll be faced with this endless loop, frustrating their experience and causing system instability. As you can see, a simple batch file can create significant headaches for a victim. Always be cautious of the files you download, especially from unsolicited emails, as they could carry malicious software like viruses. Next up, we have worms. Unlike viruses, worms don't need a host program to attach themselves to. Instead, they spread across networks by exploiting vulnerabilities. Once a worm enters your system, it replicates itself across other devices, usually by sending copies of itself over the network. Think of it like a real earthworms. Once a worm enters your house, it will start replicating itself. A major example of a worm attack is the WannaCry ransomware worm. In 2017, this worm targeted Windows machines using a vulnerability in the SMB, that is Server Message Block Protocol. It spread rapidly, encrypting files on infected systems and demanding ransom payments in Bitcoin to unlock them. The worm caused billions in damages and affected systems in over 150 countries. Worms have in total 4 main types of it, which are email worms, network worms, internet worms, and IM worms. Now, let's see how a worm can be created using the Internet Worm Maker tool. In this demo, we will build a worm that replicates itself in a system, and because of security reasons, we have to turn off our internet connection to stop worm from replicating itself across a local network. You'll see how quickly it replicates itself in one device, without needing any interaction from the user. As you can see with this software, an attacker can generate various types of worms, and each of them are capable of performing different malicious activities, like a worm can disable Windows security, corrupt files, disable key functionalities, revoke admin permissions, consume all available storage, and even spread across entire networks and start infecting connected devices through the same network. In this practical, we are creating a simple worm called WasWorm. Its purpose is to consume all available space on the system. If the network is active, this worm can spread across the network and infect any device connected to it. That's why, for safety, we've disabled the network before proceeding. The software also provides an option to choose how the worm will spread. By clicking on the Spreading Options button, we can see the different methods available to propagate the worm. You can select any method based on the attack scenario, or even create different types of worms as per your needs. Now, once the worm is generated, it can be sent to a target through various methods, such as social engineering, USB drives, or network exploitation. As soon as the worm enters the victim's system, it will automatically execute the malicious code without requiring any user interaction. It will then begin replicating itself, just like a real worm, and perform the attack as coded by the attacker. This is how a worm operates and spreading automatically and executing its payload without any need for human intervention. Finally, let's talk about Trojans. Just like the Trojan horse from Greek mythology, a Trojan disguises itself as something harmless or like a legitimate program or file, but once you download and run it, it opens the doors for attackers to take control of your system. Unlike worms and viruses, Trojans don't spread by themselves. They rely on the victim to be tricked into installing them. A major example of a Trojan attack is Zeus, which was a banking Trojan that infected millions of devices. Zeus was used to steal login credentials by logging keystrokes and sending the information to attackers. Many people lost their savings because their banking data was compromised. In the cyber world, we are having total 5 main types of Trojans, which are remote access Trojans, banking Trojans, backdoor Trojans, downloader Trojans, ransomware Trojans. Now, let's see how a remote access Trojan created and works using the HMRAT tool. This type of Trojan allows the attacker to control the victim's machine remotely, accessing files, recording keystrokes, and even turning on the webcam. In this demo, we will show you how an attacker can use this tool to gain complete control over a system once the Trojan is executed. Now let's move on to creating a Trojan file, which we'll be sending to our victim to gain remote control of their system. For this demonstration, we'll execute the Trojan on our own system to show how it works. In this tool, we first need to select the port through which we will control the victim's system. To do this, we'll perform network scanning to identify which ports are open on the victim's machine. If the victim is on a different network, then port forwarding will be required for this attack, which we'll cover in future videos. After choosing the port number, we move to the Builder option located on the left-hand corner of the tool. This will allow us to build the Trojan malware file, which we'll send to the victim. Remember, this Trojan requires human interaction. That means it needs the victim to click on it once for the malicious code to execute on their system. Next, we'll input the victim's IP address, which we collected during network scanning, and the open port number from port scanning. Then, we'll provide a name for the file. The name should be something that seems harmless or believable to the victim, making them more likely to open it. It's also important to check the box labeled Copy. This ensures that even if the victim deletes the file, a copy will remain hidden on their system, giving us long-term access through a backdoor. You can choose the location for the hidden file from the directory options in the tool. Once all this is set, we click on Build to create the Trojan file. After the file is generated, it can be sent to the victim through various means. Once the victim opens the file, we gain remote access to their system, as you can see on the screen. With remote access, we can monitor the victim's activities, view their social media passwords, and access much more, as shown in the options on the screen. Even if the victim deletes the file, our backdoor will still be present, allowing us to maintain control. Once we've achieved our objective, we can delete the Trojan and clean up all traces of the attack, leaving no evidence behind. This is how a Trojan works, and specifically, how the Rat tool operates. Always remember, this video is for educational purposes only. Never attempt these actions without proper authorization and legal access. Now that we've seen how dangerous viruses, worms, and Trojans can be, but how can we protect ourselves? Here are a few tips for it. So first, install and update antivirus software, which can detect and remove malware, but it needs to be kept up to date to recognize the latest threats. Also, be cautious with email attachments and links, which means never open attachments or click links from unknown or suspicious emails. Regularly update your software, as malware often exploits known vulnerabilities, so keep your operating system and applications updated. Also, use a firewall, as it helps in block of unauthorized access to your network. Next one is back up your data. Regular backups will help you to recover from a malware attack without losing important files. Always be cautious of downloads. Download softwares only from trusted sources to avoid Trojans and other malware. Last but not the least one, to use strong and unique passwords. Malware like Trojans often steal passwords, so use strong, unique passwords for each account. So, that's it for today's video on malware. We covered the basics of viruses, worms, and Trojans, including how they work and how attackers use tools like Delmabatch Virus Maker, Internet Worm Maker, and Rat to create them. Remember, with the right knowledge and precautions, you can keep your system safe. Thank you for your patience and watching our video till end. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.